I'm James. I'm your host for the next couple of sessions. And this particular one, we're joined by Darren Chait. Darren was founder of a business called Hugo, which was subsequently acquired by Calendly. So we'll dig into that. I've got a few questions, but likewise we'll take some from the audience as well. But Darren, anything in particular you'd like to open up with?
No, thanks for having me. So yeah, I come from Sydney, Australia. I was living in the US for quite a while, moved back to Sydney during COVID, and yeah, run growth today at Calendly. So happy to chat on both sides of the spectrum, startup life through the acquisition, and then what life's like at a much bigger tech company being Calendly today.
I'm going to start with the exit process. I did an exit of our business last year, actually, so sort of still very fresh in mind. And the first thing I want to ask is, did you go out looking for a buyer, or did they come to find you? And if you went out looking, what did that process look like?
Yeah, so we didn't. Actually, another company approached us, and it was at a funny time. We were chatting a bit about this early last year. There were inklings that the venture capital world were about to implode and things were changing quite rapidly. So we got approached by another well-known B2B SaaS company, and they said, look, this is what we want to achieve on our roadmap, and we think Hugo, as our company would be a great fit. And it was exciting, I think, because, you always have that existential moment of which road to take. But as the world was kind of imploding around us, we figured it would make sense. And in particular, it wasn't like we wanted out and to try and cash out from what we'd built. We really wanted to keep growing the value of what we'd done. And at the right company, we could do that, and without getting to the terms of the deal, it was really important to us to still have growth opportunity, both personally within the new company, but also financially, where we could be a part of something much bigger that could accelerate what we were doing. So to answer your question, another company approached us. Conversations were going well, and we realized, oh shit, we better build a bit of a process here, right? Never having one deal on the table is not going to get us the best outcome. So we'd known Tote from Calendly for quite a few years, and we reached out to him and said, hey, just FYI, we might be exiting sometime soon. We've got something on the table. And he said, oh, the timing's perfect. We've been looking at the space. We really want to double down on meeting life cycle. Let's chat. And the rest was history, and we decided to go with Calendly for lots of reasons. So we sort of bit of both. Someone came to us, which led us to go out to someone else.
Yeah, I mean, ours was not totally dissimilar in that I was actually talking to a couple of sponsors of our conference about what route we might go. There's some stuff we could go harder on, maybe some stuff we could sunset, and the conversation kind of turned from there. Does that mean you're for sale? Okay, we'll take that call. This could be interesting. Let's see where we go. So post-acquisition, you're still with the business. Integration, I worked on our integration for somewhere coming on a year. You're still in there. How does it feel? It's kind of an emotional moment, right?
Yeah, it's funny. The grass is always greener, and I'll tell any founder that. There's a lot of pros to being in an early stage company, and there's a lot of benefits to being in a much larger company. Calendly's at a great stage. We are 600 employees or so, and it's great in that you've got a big brand, you've got a lot of volume and traffic and things happening, but it's still early enough where you can influence things. It's not yet stuck with the red tape and process of a huge tech company, where I think I'd be pulling my hair out. So it's a nice balance. So I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying it. There's definitely days where I just want to do my own thing and so on, but on balance, it's great. It's great to be here. And Hugo is sort of been pulled apart a bit, and it's forming part of Calendly's roadmap into the next few years. But I'm working across the whole Calendly business, which is also a nice change. After 5 years of building Hugo, it's nice thinking about other things too.
Okay. I want to bring this back to a little bit of a product question, actually, which is an interesting one that I don't actually see come up very often. A lot of people, when they're building product companies, they know that an exit is a possibility, that they might be acquired. You've now been through exactly that, and you're still working with the new product team. When you built that product, are there decisions you could have made differently or should have made differently in order to make that exit and subsequent integration easier? What would you change about the product approaches taken?
It's interesting. When you get acquired by an older company, Calendly's 11 years old, we're the ones actually with the better stack, right? So Calendly was built on Rails, for example. We were using newer JavaScript frameworks like Node and on the back end and React on the front end. And the integration challenges with that, in that how do we sort of move backwards in a way. And I think scale is a big problem. So in general, Calendly, millions of meetings booked every day, right? So huge volume. So when we're building product, we don't think that through because we're in the thousands of daily active users. So a lot of challenges there, but I don't think it's the right way to think about building. I think building is still all about product market fit and early growth and proving it out and figuring. And then those things are always surmountable challenges. You can always get around them, and that's where Calendly's add a lot of value. They look at our code base and say, hey, this is. I see why you did that, but that's just not going to work in this world, and here's how we'd re-architect that. So I wouldn't change anything in retrospect.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the topics that we got asked about with Mind the Product a lot is, could you do an event just for startups, or could you do an event just for enterprise? And we typically try and avoid that on the basis that the enterprise firms are the one who figured out how to scale, which is what most startups want. The enterprise companies then struggle with how to innovate. They've forgotten, which is what startups spend all day long doing. So putting them both together is actually where you get the best mix. Are you finding that's true now you're working inside that environment?
Yeah, I've got a bit of a reputation inside Calendly of being a bit relentless and impatient. And it's a good thing. I've come from a startup background with 25 employees where we could do whatever we wanted and change at the drop of a hat. You go to a bigger company where there's big teams and lots of process, and I don't really like taking no for an answer, and it serves us well for that reason. They like that pressure of going, hang on, there's got to be an easy way to do this, and I like the learnings and the development of how big business does things. So I think I agree with you. I don't think it's the right way to think about this is what you do then, this is what you do then later. You should be trying to mesh them together to be effective.
Absolutely. And speaking of meshing things together, Ryan's obviously talked a fair bit today about bringing engineers into the process more, working with designers and product people together. What's your take on that cross-functional style of work? Is that working for you, and any particular tips you'd want to share?
Yeah, so in an early stage company, firstly, I'll talk about both. At Hugo, we learned that lesson very early on. I was a first-time founder. I'd come from a background as a corporate lawyer, which is very old-fashioned, right? So I always thought that our job as founders and executives was to set the vision and the process and give everyone work to do and make sure it got done. And I remember as we were uncovering these huge problems, it was so much. I was so stressed. Like, it was so much pressure to try and figure out all the answers so I can give the team clear guidance. And I had this epiphany one day. Someone said something to me. I can't even remember who or when, but really realizing that people had signed up to work for a startup because they like problems. They want to be a part of those problems. And it's not our job to insulate the team from those problems. Our job is to take the problems to the team and facilitate solutions with the team. And as soon as we made that little shift, everything changed. And to your point, and going and like to Ryan, what Ryan was saying, going to teams, to engineering teams and designers and products, saying, "Hey guys, I don't know how we're going to fix this. Like, this is not getting adopted. This is not growing. This is growing really well, but we're not able to monetize. Like, what are we doing about it?" It changed everything. The best ideas don't come from the people with the job title. Some of our best design ideas came from engineers and the like. And B, they're so much more engaged in the problem. It's our problem. We all need to solve together, not just another Jira ticket. That's definitely the case. Speaking enterprise at Calendly, they do that really well. We're cross-functional. We're in squads. So a squad will have product management, engineering, design, project management, and the like, and they work on a part of the app or the customer journey, and that's been very effective for the same reason. How do we solve this onboarding problem rather than I'm just the next front-end engineer taking the next ticket off the queue?
In terms of your journey and the skills that you've picked up and the experiences along the way, there's always outside influences, right? Other people that we respect and learn from. So I'm going to ask you to pick out 3 over the years that you've particularly admired and have really helped you on your journey. Who should we be looking to? Who should we be learning from?
Okay, so Ryan's already stolen Clay Christensen, so I won't mention him again. He didn't talk about the jobs to be done framework that much, or maybe I missed it at the beginning. But I think jobs to be done is a great way of thinking from him. But anyway, I won't use him again. Okay, so I think at a few different levels, I like to read a lot, and I think growth isn't a job function per se. That's, you can go and, study a Bachelor of Growth, or, there's so many different ways into growth. As I said, I'm a corporate lawyer. I'm pretty technical, and I'm very into data, but I don't have a job, like a nice resume for leading growth. So I just read all day and all night and, find things that interest me. Who and what have I read that's been really impactful? I think from a business model standpoint, I think great growth people really understand business very well. Any company builders do, but growth in particular. There's an investor from Redpoint Ventures named Thomas Tungus. He puts out great short essays. I read every single one of them. Great just perspectives generally around growth. I got to meet him a couple of times, and he gave us incredible insight into specific problems as well. I would have loved to have him to be an investor in our businesses over time, and I really like his stuff. I don't want to be too cliched as well. There's another growth person. His name's Guillaume. Come to me in 1 second. He ran growth at Segment and Clearbit and a few other companies. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I've gone blank on his name. I haven't slept a whole lot. He as well. He's been very, very helpful with his content that he writes and getting to know him and reading his material around growth, running growth functions and growth teams. And I think that's something as well that's quite tricky. It's in a new world. Growth as a concept's only maybe 5-10 years old, and how do you run a growth team and run experimentation and the like has been a real challenge. And I've really enjoyed getting that and getting to know him. And the other one, it is a bit cliched, but I think one of the most impactful things I read early on was 0 to 1. And yeah, you've probably hopefully most people have come across it, and I think it was a really big lesson for us. I was very much wired as a 1 to N person. Take a business that has product market fit, and how do we scale that? I'm an ops guy, right? I'm a lawyer. I can understand risk. I'm financial. I can hire. I can all of these things, and I had to rewire myself as a 0 to 1 stage, right? Which is before product market fit, if that's what your one is, or before figuring out what you're doing. And I really struggled with that, and to this day I think it's something I've developed a whole lot, but that's why I'm so happy now in Calendly, because we're very much in that 1 to N. So Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1, definitely worth reading if you're an early stage founder, and I think it's just a bit of a driver of epiphanies in how to think about things.
Okay, we're going to look forward a little now rather than back. We've seen over the last couple of years the rise of the product-led growth topic. It's been on the lips of everybody everywhere, but business is obviously cyclical. We move on, we find new methods, new frameworks. What do you think comes after product-led growth?
Yeah, there's a lot of nice buzzwords out there. I've heard a lot of people talking about customer-led growth, and I'll tell you the problem with product-led growth, and maybe that'll then help us decide what's next together. In this room, we can coin something. But the reason we talk about customer-led growth is, so a business like Calendly, right, is, as I said earlier, a poster child for PLG. You have this nice viral loop. It acquires millions of users every week, and you don't have to do anything to acquire top of funnel. Now, how do we monetize and build a good business off them? There's a whole ton of hybrid strategies. We ended up at Calendly actually building out a sales org to try and monetize more of the funnel, and that became like our sales-led funnel. And we ended up with 2 funnels, which is really a disastrous outcome actually, because you end up with this competing pressure of which funnel do you push everyone into, and if they're in the wrong funnel, they're going to have a terrible experience, and we're not going to monetize them. So, for example, you have the CIO of a big, huge corporation sign up themselves at 11 p.m. at night, and we're like, oh shit, they're stuck here. They're just going to convert it, $12 a month with their credit card. Meanwhile, we want to do a $200,000 deal. They're in the wrong funnel. How do we bring them across? But then we still want them to activate and have a great experience with Calendly, because they're evaluating the product. They're seeing the value for themselves. We want them to love what they're doing. But our sales funnel's getting all this pressure saying, what's this logo doing at $12 a month? We need to start with SDRs and discovery and all of that. And you end up with this very competing process. And you have the inverse too. There's plenty of examples where our sales team will close $5,000 deals, and we're like, oh my God, we're losing money on that deal, really. By the time we're done pushing them through the whole sales funnel, they should have had this beautiful self-serve experience where they can activate for themselves, put their credit card in. A month later, they can invite some teammates, but they're stuck in the wrong place. Now, what that led us to, we started thinking a lot about this concept of customer-led growth, because PLG is one growth strategy, but it's not how you grow a business necessarily. It might get you to a point, but as I said before, most companies end up with some sort of hybrid of everything anyway. So our approach now is, as we think about CLG or customer-led growth, to throw another buzzword in, is to think about like, what does the customer want to do? If the customer wants to self-serve late at night because they're tech savvy and that's how they do things, let them do that. That's fine. We'll look for triggers and opportunities to make them a product qualified lead and then try and upsell them with value and so on. But they're driving, not us. We can't sit on our website and just bully them into talking to sales when all they want to do is self-serve, or let them go and try and talk to sales and pull them out of there as hard as we can, to try and get them to self-serve when they really just want a demo. So I think that's why PLG is just another tool in the belt, part of any sort of growth strategy, and it should get a little bit less hype, and hopefully it's heading that way. But it's just another growth channel, really. It's not the be all and end all, and it's super sexy because the economics look great and so on. But it's just not reality to have a business that's 100% PLG forever.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked inside firms that talk a lot about PLG, and they sell tools that will help you do that. But they're actually sales-driven when you really look at how they work. So there's certainly a little hubris around the PLG topic as a whole, I would agree. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left on the clock here, and I'm conscious that in Darren's mind, we have a very unusual combination of lawyer, finance, operation, product, growth, and no doubt a little engineering as well. So when you have this really unusual brain sat right here, any questions?
Because we cannot hear it on the camera.
Oh, right. So I would like to ask you if you ever had the experience where you had to decide between killing a product or pivoting within the product. And can you explain what was your the process and how you thought it through and what happened? Thanks.
Such a good question, and I'm very happy to chat more after if there's specifics. So. Yes. Okay. So when we started Hugo, we were very interested in meetings. As I said, came from a background as a lawyer. Couldn't believe how there'd been no innovation in the way we meet in forever. And we thought the issue was meeting preparation. So we built a mobile app that helped you prepare for meetings, and it scraped the web for content about the people you were meeting based on your calendar and gave you a little briefing on who you met. And we ended up with, I think we had 2,000-3,000 customers, all spending a few dollars a month, so reasonable size, nothing huge, but decent. And we ended up at this flat sort of growth point where we didn't quite know how to grow, and we were struggling to monetize because it was at this dangerous intersection of B2C and B2B where it helped you at work, but your companies weren't going to pay for that. It was a mobile app that you had to make you better in meetings, but you weren't going to spend money on tools for work personally. And there were a few other issues with that, and we had this moment of we had some growth. I think it's a lot easier to pivot when there's zero, where your downside isn't anything. And the real point for us was trying to understand whether we had product market fit. All the sort of bullshit, metrics aside for do you have PMF, don't you? Would people genuinely care if we didn't exist? Being honest. And the way we answered that was we asked everyone what they would do if we didn't exist, and everyone would just revert to the mean. What you want to hear is people would desperately look for another solution because you're going to break a core process in their company. And for that reason, we completely. That was a big point of, I touched on before, where we got the team together and saying, hey guys, this isn't it. This isn't working. So what do we know? What problem are we trying to solve? Is that still a real problem? And how are we going to solve that? And that was when we made a pretty big pivot towards Hugo, as it ended up being, beyond that. So I think it is really hard to make those decisions. The later you make those calls, the more expensive, the bigger the opportunity cost. You want to do that early. You definitely don't want to throw away things that are working, the baby with the bathwater, as they say, but you need some sort of objective way to measure whether it's it or not. And I think the best thing you can do is get someone external who's not emotional about it, a friend, an advisor, an investor, to try, and maybe not an investor, they're not that, maybe they are a bit emotional, but trying to get someone outside to say, this is what we've got, this is what we know, what's your take on it? Because you're wedded to the problem, right? It's really hard to be objective and say, yes, no, this is what we need to do. It's a tough position to be in.
I'll give you a top tip on that one. My previous business, Mind the Product, was started on the back of a small community of product managers in London called Product Tank, and it grew from there. Those Product Tank communities now exist in 220 cities across the world, including Cluj, Bucharest, so on. So if you're ever looking for those opinions, go to Product Tank. You'll find a room full of 20, 30 other product managers, and you can sound them out and get their opinions. It's a great resource for stuff like that. When you're trying to solve problems, go talk to other product people with fresh eyes. See what they've got for you. Anybody else want to hit us up with another? I've got one more question if you don't.
Hi, nice to meet you. Quick question. Do you guys do account-based marketing besides PLG in Calendly for the enterprise customers? And if you do, how do you combine it?
Yeah, we do now. It's new, so this is a new muscle for us. We've got an ABM team. The way we combine it now is it's driven by PQLs. So one of the problems you have in a product like Calendly that's very bottoms up is your decision makers aren't necessarily your users, and your users can be spread across a whole company. So what we want to try and do is influence everyone's perception to enable us to sell. So when we PQL an account, so what that would mean is, let's say the team at Pendo, your ex-company there, was using Calendly. We had some seats around the place. Maybe they're paying a bit on their credit card. We know that Pendo's got, let's say, 1,000 employees, and they're a great target for us. We want to really upsell them an enterprise solution. We would start an ABM campaign for Pendo, so using bunch of ads, email, like all different ABM strategies to really surround Pendo. And then when we go in with our product-led like sales motion there, it feels very warm and well received. So we're doing that now for high value accounts. It's quite a new muscle. We're really new to enterprise, to be totally honest, and ABM and enterprise marketing. But yeah, we're now up and running as of this year, 2023.
Okay, thank you. That leads beautifully into the final question that I had in my mind, actually, which is simply this. How do you balance demand versus brand spending?
Yeah, sounds like you've had my Zoom calls tapped. Yeah, everyone struggles with this, as you know. And in this market, it's even harder because every CFO and every founder is watching the dollars tighter than ever. And as we know, brand is very hard to attribute and show ROI. So, a couple of things. Firstly, we realize, and one has to realize, that brand does have ROI. It's not to say that, it's been well established out there. It's you can't debate that. It's how do we find that slider between the two, what we can measure and what we can't. So we do a few things. We do try and attribute a bit to brand spend, not at a high level, but what's directionally helpful and what's not. During, Dreamforce last year, we did a big out-of-home campaign across San Francisco. We saw a big uptick in leads and signups from San Francisco. So those sorts of very loose attribution just helps directionally. Two, you do things and things go well, you have to have some sort of correlation. So recognizing that the more we spend on brand, the more we grow, we've just got to keep that baseline spend. And then three, on the demand side, I think they go hand in hand. Like as you invest more in brand, demand reduces, for example. The cost of demand, I should say, reduces, like return on ad spend increases and the like. We see a lot of our same efforts go to both. So content marketing, for example, really helps with brand and demand. You can attribute, leads and signups to content marketing spend, but also just general brand awareness. So there's no secret. I think you need a good CFO who appreciates the value of this stuff, and a CMO who can sell to them, or the equivalent in an early stage company. But I honestly don't think there's any secret there. I just think it's a recognition that you need to spend on brand. Based on financial position and economics, that slider might move slightly further away and towards it, and to be open-minded about how you measure the value of brand, looking at broad attribution and general themes, and when things are going well and they feel great, looking at what brand you can attribute to that, and in downturns, where you've pulled back on brand, to try and tell some sort of value story to decision makers.
Excellent. That's all from me. Any final questions from the audience before we let Darren stretch his legs a little?
I have one. So I have a question because I used to work at a fintech. I was their marketing manager and their first hire as a marketing manager, actually. And what do you do? Or I struggled for at least 6 months with doing the process for the funnels. So everything was all over the place. We're also testing Mixpanel, amplitude, what works, what doesn't work. It was B2C. It was also a mobile app for payments. and it was like hard as hell for me, at least, to set everything up. Now looking back, I don't know what I should have done better. So maybe can you tell me what was like the process, or what was the process like for this kind of stuff? You know, when you're going like to a startup, they don't have like anything in place, and what's the first thing that I should look for?
Totally. Great question. And a very common problem. Lots of companies I advise, early stage companies, we talk about this. So I think what you need to do first is figure out your North Stars. So what do we care about? And what is growth? What is success? It's so easy to get caught up with a million different metrics and all of this, and then that translates into tracking challenges because, you know, attribution is one way of thinking about things, and then return on ad spend and everything around payments, and then revenue growth and how that, and all, no wonder you're like looking at millions of tools. Like, what matters most to us right now? And that's in 3 months' time, it might be something else, that's fine. But are we just trying to drive more users? Are we trying to drive more revenue? What matters? What's our North Star? So I think that's the first question. And I would use that to define the metrics, and then you find the tools to define the metrics. So that's how I'd be thinking about things. If there's more than 3 or so key metrics, there's too many in the early days, and then look for the tools. From a tooling standpoint, I can definitely chat more about that. You know, we at Hugo, and same at Calendly actually, we use Segment. It can get really expensive, but there's some good startup tiers. And the reason I like Segment is you kind of standardize on one customer data platform, and you can push your data anywhere in a no-code way. So yeah, you went from Mixpanel to Amplitude and maybe Google Analytics and all of this, and it becomes a nightmare. But when you've got something in between, you can just funnel your data wherever you need it to figure that out. So agree on your North Star, 3 core metrics. Think about tracking to solve for that. Don't worry about everything else for the start. And then also you might want to look at some startup tiers for some of these great CDPs like Segment. It just makes it easier to connect different tools and that. Because the other problem I've found, maybe you experienced, is you're always competing with product priorities for engineering to help with tracking. So I'm like, guys, we need more. I need events firing for this so I know if this campaign's successful. And they're like, go away. We're trying to build a product for you to sell. And that's always an issue. So the more you can democratize, with your segments and other tools, the more you do yourself, the more you operate in your own world. Or yeah, we don't even know if what you're working on is right. But then, yeah. Totally, it's like that everywhere, as no doubt James will attest. But the more you can make your own, marketing ops, and as I said, I was a lawyer, right? I'm not technical by background, and the reason I got but I got technical was because I wanted to do things myself. I didn't want to be that burden for engineering. And in 2023, it's never been easier. There's so many great tools out there where you can just build your own tracking and growth, operations, so you're not a constant burden on engineering. So.
And the vast majority of those enterprise-grade tools do have startup tiers available, making them more accessible than ever before. So
I'm now at Underline Ventures, and I'm with the platform, and I'm always asking discounts for our portfolio companies for that. And I also got Segment.io.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, yeah. But our founders don't know if they need this. So also, how should I explain or make the bridge between okay, we have this discount, we have this platform. How the founders that are early stage, even pre-seed, can understand that they need to track and use the tool, because that's also another challenge also in the early phases.
Yeah, and the other problem is with startups in particular, you obviously can't go backwards in time. So everyone thinks about data too late, and then I don't know my trends. I don't know where I've come from. I don't know if it's good, bad, growing. So you have to think about this right at the beginning. But you also don't want to spend a lot of time early on. So I would definitely make the case for it's a day one thing. You should be thinking when you release your first product, you should have some basic tracking in there. Try and get stuff out of the box that doesn't need much. There's Heap and others that do all their own tracking. You don't have to go and label every event and the like. Google Analytics will give you a bunch of good marketing data on where everyone's coming from. But it sounds like maybe you need a bit of a playbook, like a 3-pager on here is how the best early stage startups track everything, and what you need now, and what's nice to have, and what you can deal with later. And the case for you're going to be raising your next round. You have to show some sort of growth story. It's too late to start tracking then. So how can we, in a really easy, low-cost way, get something in place at the beginning?
Yeah. You only get your next round if you can show growth. You can only show growth if you measure something. You don't grow what you don't measure fundamentally. Anyway.
I will tell them that, and maybe they will listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to take a short break now. Let you stretch your legs a little.